Captain Jessica Morgan hadn't slept in 36 hours, but her hands remained steady on the U.S. Defender's tactical console. The massive crystalline vessel ahead of them pulsed with colors she hadn't known existed, its geometric patterns defying human engineering principles. Yet none of that mattered as much as the civilian mining vessel caught between them, the Alessandro Volta, with its crew of 43. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Park's voice cracked slightly at tactical. "The alien vessel is powering up something. Energy signatures are, well, they're not like anything in our database." Jessica nodded, keeping her expression neutral for the crew's benefit. "Maintain position between them and the Volta. Open all frequencies again." The crystalline ship had appeared seemingly out of nowhere 20 minutes ago, its massive form dwarfing both the Defender and the mining vessel. Their first transmission had been clear enough. "Cease your violence against the Void Stone immediately." It had taken precious minutes to realize they meant the mining operation. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Jessica Morgan of the United Earth Ship Defender." She kept her voice steady, diplomatic. "The civilian operation you're concerned about follows all United Earth environmental protocols. We're happy to share these protocols and discuss any specific concerns." The response came in that same harmonious multi-tone voice. "We detect 37 implements of death aboard your vessel, 22 aboard the resource killer. Your species remains bound to violence. You will be quarantined for rehabilitation." Jessica's jaw tightened. "Those implements are standard defensive measures." "We do not." "Violence is violence." The voice interrupted. "The luminous Concordat cannot permit the spread of your corruption. Your vessels will be escorted to." "This is a sovereign United Earth operation." Jessica cut in, breaking about 15 diplomatic protocols. "Those civilians are under my protection. Any attempt to forcibly move either vessel will be considered an act of aggression." The crystalline ship's pulsing patterns accelerated. "You threaten violence to prevent rehabilitation. This only proves our assessment correct." Jessica glanced at her tactical display. The Volta had finally managed to retract their mining equipment, but their drive system was still spinning up. They needed 3 more minutes, maybe 4. "Lieutenant Park, shield status." "Holding at maximum, Captain." But he swallowed. Their energy readings just tripled. Whatever they're powering up, it's big. The crystalline ship suddenly blazed with light, patterns shifting faster than human eyes could follow. A new voice came through, higher-pitched and urgent. "Violence-tainted vessel, you will power down immediately. We detect your energy weapons charging. This is an unacceptable escalation." Jessica blinked, looking at her tactical display. "Our weapons aren't." She stopped, understanding dawning. "Those are our shields. Defensive systems only." "Deception," the voice proclaimed. "All power structures serve violence. You will." "Captain," Park interrupted. "The Volta's drive is hot. They can move." Jessica straightened in her chair. "Unknown vessel, these are our citizens. This is our space, and we will defend both. You've given us no identification, no credentials, and no right to issue commands. The Volta is leaving. We are leaving. If you attempt to stop either ship, we will consider it an act of war." She nodded to Park. "Begin retrograde pattern Delta 3. Keep us between them and the Volta." The crystalline ship's patterns became almost seizure-inducing. "You would risk violence to prevent peace." "We would risk violence to prevent unauthorized detention of civilians," Jessica corrected. "There's a difference. Volta Actual, you are clear to proceed. We'll cover your exit." The next 3 minutes were the longest of Jessica's career, as the Defender executed a complicated backward defensive pattern while the Volta made their escape. The crystalline ship maintained its position, its patterns shifting through what Jessica would later learn were the colors of moral outrage, ethical distress, and philosophical crisis. As the Volta finally cleared the system, the alien vessel transmitted once more. "The luminous Concordat will remember this. Your species requires extensive study It wasn't until both Earth ships were safely in hyperspace that Jessica finally allowed herself to shake, just a little. Humanity's first contact with the galactic community, and she'd managed to get them labeled as violent barbarians in need of rehabilitation. She wondered if she'd just started a war trying to prevent one. Colonel Jack Davidson never thought he'd consider plate glass a tactical advantage, but as he watched the growing protest outside the Washington embassy through its transparent walls, he was grateful for the clear sightlines. 200 human protesters faced off against 30 Concordat peacekeepers, tall, crystalline beings who literally glowed with what they called harmonious intention. "Sir," Sergeant Amy Rodriguez kept her voice low, "their peacekeepers are approaching our security checkpoint again." "Hold position," Davidson ordered, watching a particular figure in the crowd, a man whose body language screamed trouble to Davidson's 20 years of security experience. "And maintain weapons at safe." The Concordat delegation had arrived 3 weeks ago to assist humanity's rehabilitation. Their first demand had been the removal of all armed security from the embassy. When Davidson refused, they began sending peacekeepers to liberate the human guards from their violent obligations. High Mediator Zixus's crystalline form shimmered with disapproval as he approached Davidson. "Colonel, your armed personnel continue to generate disharmony. The crowd's agitation increases with each passing moment." With respect, Mediator, Davidson kept his eyes on the troublemaker, who was now working his way through the crowd. "My personnel aren't the problem. Your peacekeepers keep trying to remove our security barriers. That's making people nervous." "Barriers are violence made physical," Zixus proclaimed. "They divide, separate, create fear. They create controlled spaces." Davidson interrupted, something he'd been doing more frequently lately. "They allow us to monitor." He stopped, body tensing. The man he'd been watching had reached into his jacket. Rodriguez, east side, gray jacket, 40 degrees up from the barrier. "Seen," Rodriguez responded crisply. "What are you?" Zixus began, then froze as the man pulled out a metallic cylinder. "Violence. He intends violence." Davidson was already moving. Rodriguez, flashbang authorized. "Peters, evacuate the civilians nearest to him. Torres, get our Concordat friends back from the windows." The next 30 seconds seemed to happen in slow motion. The man, later identified as a member of the Earth First movement, raised what turned out to be a homemade plasma device. Rodriguez's flashbang detonator sailed through the air with perfect accuracy. Davidson's team moved with practiced precision, clearing civilians from the danger zone while maintaining coverage of other potential threats. The flashbang went off just as the plasma device started to glow, startling the attacker and causing him to drop it. Davidson himself tackled the man, using textbook non-lethal takedown techniques, while Peters secured the device. When it was over, Davidson found himself face to face with a shaking Zixus. The Concordat mediator's crystalline form had shifted to a pale, almost translucent shade. You used violence against one of your own to protect us." Davidson stood, brushing off his uniform. "No, sir. We used minimal force to prevent violence. There's a difference." He gestured to the secured plasma device. "That thing could have killed dozens, including your peacekeepers. We stopped it without any serious injuries. That's what security does. But the barriers, the weapons, the division of space." Zixus's form shifted through various colors, created a controlled environment that let us spot the threat, respond precisely, and prevent mass casualties. Davidson finished. "This is why we maintain security, sir. Not because we love violence, but because we understand that sometimes you need controlled force to prevent uncontrolled violence." The media storm that followed was intense. Footage of human security forces protecting Concordat peacekeepers from a human attacker went viral across both Earth and Concordat space. The philosophical debates that erupted would have been fascinating if Davidson had time to follow them. Instead, he focused on his after-action report, particularly the final paragraph. The incident demonstrates the continued necessity of trained security forces in maintaining peaceful diplomatic relations. Recommendation: continue current security protocols while developing joint training programs to help our Concordat allies understand the difference between defensive readiness and aggressive intent. A week later, he received a surprising request. High Mediator Zixus wanted to learn more about human security protocols. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And then the first reports of the swarm arrived. Lieutenant Commander Mike O'Reilly had spent 3 years on Europa Station listening to space whisper its secrets, but he'd never heard anything like this. The signal was fragmented, distorted by distance, and what seemed like deliberate interference, but its pattern was unmistakable, panic in mathematical form. "Run it through the filters again, Carter," he ordered, rubbing his tired eyes. The young communications specialist nodded, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "Still the same pattern, sir," she reported. "It's definitely coming from beyond Concordat space, but the encoding is like nothing in our database. What's weird is the rhythm. It's like the Yellowstone transmissions," O'Reilly finished. He'd been 17 when the killer asteroid threatened Earth, young enough to remember the desperate calculations being broadcast as scientists worked to prevent extinction. These signals carried the same frantic mathematical urgency. The Europa Station's monitoring array was humanity's furthest deep space listening post, technically violating the Concordat's quarantine of Earth. But after the Washington Embassy incident, even the Concordat had grudgingly accepted human defensive observation protocols. "Sir," Carter's voice sharpened. "New signal, stronger. Translating now." The holographic display filled with cascading symbols. O'Reilly felt his throat tighten as the translation emerged. "They consume. Cannot be reasoned. Hibernation, fedials. Save what remains. Get me the Concordat Embassy," O'Reilly ordered. "Priority channel." The crystalline face of Junior Mediator Vix appeared, looking annoyed. "Commander O'Reilly, your unauthorized monitoring station continues to. We're picking up distress signals from the Helix arm," O'Reilly interrupted. "Multiple sources showing signs of civilization-wide panic. Something's out there, and it's consuming worlds." Vix's color shifted to what O'Reilly had learned was diplomatic condescension. The Helix arm contains several pre-enlightened species prone to emotional outbursts. The Concordat is already sending meditation guides to. Another signal burst through, stronger than before. This time, the translation needed no interpretation. A visual feed showed crystalline beings like Vix being swarmed by something dark and chitinous, their forms shattering as they tried to maintain peaceful poses. By the harmonious light, Vix whispered. "Those are your people," O'Reilly pressed. "This isn't happening in the Helix arm. It's already reached Concordat space. We need to. Peace will prevail." Vix interrupted, but his color had shifted to a sickly hue. "The Concordat's philosophers are already composing messages of welcome and harmony to these new beings. Violence is never." The feed cut off as Europa Station's proximity alerts screamed. O'Reilly's blood ran cold as he saw the readings. "Multiple contacts," Carter reported, her voice professional despite her pale face. "Emerging from subspace, biological in nature. Massive energy signatures. They're consuming the background radiation itself." O'Reilly hit the station's general alert. "All personnel, this is not a drill. Execute Protocol Omega. Repeat, Protocol Omega." He turned to Carter. "Send everything we have to Earth Command. All of it. Then wipe the systems." "Sir." Carter's hands hesitated over the controls. "Those things are heading straight for us, and they're moving faster than anything we've ever seen. We've got maybe 10 minutes. Protocol Omega means we don't let them learn anything from our databases." As the station's evacuation alerts sounded, O'Reilly made one final transmission to Earth. "Command, this is Europa Station. We are tracking multiple hostile entities of unknown biological origin. They've already breached Concordat space. Repeating. The Concordat has fallen. These entities cannot be reasoned with. They consume everything. Matter, energy, even background radiation. The Concordat's attempts at peaceful communication have failed, implementing Protocol Omega. Save what remains. The last thing O'Reilly saw before boarding the evacuation pod was the station's long-range sensors showing hundreds, no, thousands, of dark shapes moving through space, consuming everything in their path. The Concordat's meditation signals continued to broadcast their messages of peace and harmony. The screaming began 3 days later. Dr. Emily Sullivan's lab at the Tucson Deep Space Research Center hadn't slept in days. The holographic displays showed the same horrifying pattern. Entire worlds going dark, their biospheres transformed into something alien and hungry. But it was the soil sample on her desk that truly terrified her. General Martinez. She called out to the weathered man studying the tactical displays. "You need to see this." Thomas Old Thunder Martins limped over, his bad leg, a reminder of the Third Mars campaign, bothering him more than usual. "Tell me you've got something, Doc." Emily adjusted her microscope's feed to the main display. Remember the Australian rabbit plague of 1988, when they introduced myxomatosis to control the population? The general's eyes narrowed. The virus that got out of control and nearly collapsed the entire ecosystem. What about it? The swarm isn't just killing worlds. Emily pointed to the shifting patterns in the sample. They're transforming them. Every planet they touch becomes a breeding ground. But look at the cellular structure here. Martinez leaned closer, his tactical mind quickly grasping the implications. They're adapting. Each world they consume makes them stronger. Exactly. The Concordat's attempts at peaceful communication. Emily switched to another slide. They're giving the swarm time to analyze defensive capabilities. Every meditation signal, every peaceful overture, every attempt at harmony. It's just feeding them information. The general straightened, his expression grim. Like the rabbits learning to resist myxomatosis, each generation getting stronger. Worse, Emily brought up the data from Europa Station's final transmission. They're not just consuming biomass. They're absorbing technology, energy patterns, even background radiation. The Concordat's crystalline technology. The swarm's already learning to bypass it. Martinez was already moving to the tactical station. "Lieutenant Ross, get me every file we have on historical invasive species. Start with the Australian ecological disasters, then the American kudzu crisis, and the Atlantic lionfish invasion." "Sir," the young lieutenant looked confused. "We've seen this before," Martinez explained, his voice taking on the tone that had earned him his nickname. "Every time humans introduced a species into an ecosystem that wasn't ready for it, every time we underestimated nature's capacity for adaptation." Emily joined him at the tactical display. The Concordat doesn't understand because they've never had to fight their own biology. They evolved past violence so long ago, they've forgotten what it means to be part of a natural system. But we remember. Martinez's fingers flew over the controls, bringing up historical data. We remember every mistake, every catastrophe, every time we learn the hard way that nature doesn't care about our peaceful intentions. For the next 12 hours, they worked without breaks, combining humanity's bitter ecological lessons with current tactical data. The result was a comprehensive defensive strategy they named the Arizona Protocol. "It's not just about fighting them," Emily explained to the Emergency Council. "It's about understanding them as an invasive species. Containment, counter-adaptation, and controlled response. We have to strike hard enough to stop their advance, but precisely enough to prevent them from adapting to our methods." The Concordat representatives, watching via hologram, were horrified. "You speak of violence against an entire species." High Mediator Zixis protested. "This is exactly what we feared from humanity." "No," Martins countered, his voice steady. "We speak of protecting all species. The swarm isn't just another civilization. It's an ecological catastrophe waiting to happen. Every peaceful world you're trying to protect will become their breeding ground if we don't stop them. The Council rejected the protocol. The Concordat called it primitive fearmongering. But as Emily packed up her lab that night, she received an encrypted transmission from a group calling themselves the Tellerate Scientific Coalition. "Send us everything," the message read. "We remember what it means to fight for survival. We haven't forgotten our own evolution." Emily looked at Martinez, who nodded grimly. "Send it," he ordered. "And God help us all if we're right about what's coming." They were right. They were also too late. Marine Special Operations Officer Amanda Hayes had seen combat on 3 worlds, but nothing prepared her for the sight of a Concordat capital city being consumed. The crystalline spires of Tellerus Prime, once radiating with peaceful light, now pulsed with sickly dark veins as swarm bioforms swarmed through its streets. Reaper 1, in position, her helmet comm crackled. "We've got eyes on the research facility. Swarm presence is extensive." Hayes adjusted her active camouflage, the experimental tech, reverse-engineered from salvaged Concordat technology, bending light around her form. Status of the package: life signs detected in the lower levels. Multiple signatures match Tellerate biological patterns. And Viam, we're picking up something else. Cryosignatures. Lots of them. Hayes swore quietly. The mission was already near impossible. Extract the Tellerate scientists who'd been working on implementing the Arizona Protocol. Now, there were complications. "Thermal scan," she ordered, watching as the overlay appeared in her HUD. The swarm bioforms showed up as cold spots, their alien biology actually absorbing ambient heat, but deeper in the facility. "Those are children," her second-in-command, Master Sergeant Chen, whispered. "Concordat young. Must be some kind of emergency shelter." Hayes closed her eyes for a moment. Their dropship could barely handle the weight of the science team. Adding children would mean multiple trips through swarm-infested space. The mission parameters were clear: get the scientists who could help fight the swarm. Nothing else. "Mom." Chen's voice was carefully neutral. He knew what she was thinking. Hayes opened her eyes, watching another crystalline tower collapse under the swarm's assault. "New plan. Chen, take Bravo Team and secure the scientists. Alpha Team, you're with me. We're getting those kids out. The dropship can't." "Then we'll steal something bigger," Hayes interrupted. "There has to be a Concordat transport somewhere in this mess. These people evacuated their zoos during first contact. They wouldn't leave their children without an escape route." The next hour was a masterclass in human special operations. Hayes' team moved through the dying city like ghosts, their modified weapons delivering precisely calibrated bursts that disrupted the swarm's biological networks without triggering their adaptation responses. The Arizona Protocol's tactical insights were proving invaluable. They found the children in suspended animation, watched over by a single Concordat guardian who had refused evacuation. The ancient crystalline being stared at Hayes' team in shock. You came back," it whispered. "Even after we rejected your warnings. Even after we called you savages." "We protect children," Hayes replied simply, setting up defensive positions as Chen's team arrived with the scientists. "It's what savages do. Apparently." The Guardian's color shifted to what Hayes recognized as deep shame. "We thought we had evolved beyond the need for warriors. We forgot that sometimes the garden needs gardeners willing to pull weeds." They found the transport exactly where the Guardian said it would be, a massive crystalline ship designed for evacuating cultural treasures. Getting it airborne while under swarm attack tested every skill Hayes' team possessed. The scientists proved their worth immediately, interfacing with Concordat tech to boost the ship's shields. The children remained in cryo, their units tied into the ship's power systems, and Hayes' teams demonstrated why humans were still the galaxy's premier combat specialists, holding off wave after wave of swarm attacks. They lost 3 good people getting that ship off Tellerus Prime. Hayes would carry those names forever: Rodriguez, Patel, and Kim. But they saved 42 children and 15 of the brightest scientific minds in Concordat space. As they broke atmosphere, Hayes recorded a brief message to command: Operation Shattered Light complete. Package secured, plus additional civilian evacuees. Request immediate implementation of Arizona Protocol amendments based on recovered Tellarite data. They were right. The swarm can be beaten. But only if we fight smart and remember what we're fighting for. The Guardian, watching Earth's defense fleet appear from hyperspace to cover their escape, turned to Hayes. Perhaps, it said softly, it is time for the Concordat to remember what we once were, before we tried to become perfect. Hayes nodded, watching the battle unfold. Sometimes the old ways are best, especially when the galaxy needs gardeners who remember how to use pruning shears. Major James Cooper stood before the strangest class in West Point's history. Crystalline Concordat beings sat alongside humans in the historic classroom, their forms shifting between colors of anxiety and determination. On the wall behind him, tactical displays showed the swarm's relentless advance across the galaxy. Today, he announced, we're going to talk about gardens. The Concordat students' colors shifted to confusion. One raised an appendage, Stellar Harmonizer Vec, who'd once been a peace meditation instructor. Instructor Cooper. Vec's tones chimed uncertainly. I believe this was a tactical defense course. Cooper smiled, activating the holographic display. An image of Earth's ancient hanging gardens of Babylon appeared. The most beautiful gardens in human history weren't just collections of plants. They were engineered environments, controlled spaces, and every single one required defenders. He switched the image to show ancient temple guards, then medieval castle walls, then modern security systems. Beauty requires protection. Peace requires guardians. Your meditation chambers. They're not just for harmony. They're engineered spaces designed to maintain specific conditions, just like a garden. Understanding began to ripple through the Concordat students in waves of blue-green light. Cooper pressed on, bringing up schematics of a Concordat meditation chamber. Your technology already creates protective fields. You've just been using them to shield minds from discord. But with minimal modifications, his fingers danced across the controls, showing how the chamber's harmonious energy could be redirected. You can shield ships, cities, even entire populations from physical threats. But that would be using harmony for conflict. Another student protested, though their colors showed more uncertainty than conviction. No, Cooper corrected. It's using harmony for protection. The same way a garden wall doesn't fight the wilderness. It simply defines and protects a space where beauty can grow. Over the next 4 hours, Cooper led them through the principles of defensive warfare, always relating it back to concepts the Concordat could understand. Force fields became garden walls. Point defense systems became automated irrigation. Strategic positioning became optimal growth patterns. The breakthrough came when Vec suddenly straightened, their crystalline form blazing with inspiration. The grand harmonic chamber on our homeworld, they announced. Its resonance patterns, if we inverted the phase and linked it to our planetary grid, it would create the strongest planetary shield system ever developed. Cooper finished, unable to hide his smile. Using technology you already have, modified through principles you already understand. The room erupted in discussions, colors shifting rapidly as the Concordat students began to see their peaceful technology through new eyes. Cooper let them talk, watching as centuries of philosophical limitation began to crack. Later that day, he delivered what would become known as the Defense of Peace speech to a joint graduation ceremony. Peace isn't a flower to be admired. It's a garden that must be tended. And sometimes that means having very sharp tools. Your civilization mastered harmony. Mine mastered defense. Apart, we were incomplete. Together, we can create something unprecedented, a peace strong enough to defend itself. The speech went viral across both human and Concordat networks. Within weeks, Joint human Concordat defense programs were being established across Earth. The Concordat's meditation chambers, modified with human tactical insights, proved to be the foundation for revolutionary defensive systems. But it was Vec who truly captured the transformation. During their graduation address, the former meditation instructor's colors shifted to a new pattern never before seen in Concordat society, a harmonious blend of peaceful blue and defensive silver. "We thought we had evolved beyond the need for guardians," they announced. "Instead, we had simply forgotten that true peace is not passive. It is an active force, maintained by those willing to stand watch on the walls of our universal garden." Cooper watched his graduates prepare to return to their worlds, carrying with them a new understanding of peace and protection. The swarm was still advancing, but for the first time, he felt real hope. Sometimes the best revolutions didn't tear things down. Sometimes they simply helped people see what was already there, waiting to be used in new ways. Admiral Rebecca Winters watched the tactical display from deep within Cheyenne Mountain as the largest fleet in human history took formation above Earth. The holographic representation showed human warships interspersed with crystalline Concordat vessels, their modified meditation chambers now serving as the most sophisticated shield generators ever created. "Swarm emergence in 30 seconds, announced Captain Maya Rodriguez, her hand steady on the tactical controls. "Multiple signatures, largest concentration we've seen yet. Status of the civilian evacuation," Winters demanded, though she already knew the answer. New Denver's 15 million inhabitants had refused to leave, even with the swarm approaching. They meant to stand as a symbol of unified resistance. "Civilian shelters are at full power," Vec reported from their crystalline interface station. The former meditation instructor had become one of their best tactical coordinators. "Harmonic shields are operating at 98.7% efficiency." The space above Earth tore open as the swarm emerged, a writhing mass of bioships that seemed to drink in light itself. But this time, they faced something unprecedented. "Execute Operation Garden Wall," Winters ordered. The combined fleet moved with practiced precision. Human warships took offensive positions while Concordat vessels activated their modified meditation chambers. The resulting shield pattern wasn't the usual bubble of energy. Instead, it formed interlocking geometric patterns, creating corridors and killing zones. "Like pruning a garden," Vec commented, their crystalline form glowing with fierce determination. "We guide them where we wish them to grow, or in this case, where we want them to die." Winters finished. "All ships, execute Pattern Delta. Remember the Arizona Protocol. Control bursts only. Don't let them adapt." The battle that followed would be studied for centuries. The swarm, accustomed to either total pacifism or uncoordinated violence, found themselves facing an enemy that combined the best of both civilizations. Concordat shields herded the bioships into precise kill zones. Human gunners fired with surgical precision, using constantly varying energy frequencies developed from the Arizona Protocol. "They're adapting to Grid Pattern 3, Rodriguez reported tensely. "Shifting biological structures. Rotate to Pattern 7, Winters ordered. "Vec, initiate harmonic pulse sequence." The Concordat ship's meditation chambers pulsed with new frequencies, disrupting the swarm's attempts to evolve countermeasures. Human ships followed up with precise strikes at the disrupted bioforms. But the true test came when a swarm breaker, a massive bioship designed to smash through planetary defenses, emerged from the chaos. "All ships, clear Zone 12. Winters commanded. "Vec, is the resonance chamber ready?" "Charged and aligned," Vec confirmed. "Though we've never attempted this scale of harmony before. Now we find out if Cooper's garden theory really works," Winters muttered. Then, louder. "Execute Operation Pruning Shears." The combined fleet split into precise formations, their positions marking the points of a massive geometric pattern. The modified meditation chambers began to pulse in sequence, each ship adding its energy to a growing harmonic wave. The swarm breaker charged directly into the trap. As it reached the pattern's center, Every ship fired simultaneously, not with traditional weapons, but with perfectly synchronized harmonic pulses. The combined energy created a resonance pattern that literally pulled the massive bioship apart at the molecular level. Pattern holding, Rodriguez reported excitedly. Swarm forces are beginning to break formation. Push the advantage, Winters ordered. But maintain precision. Don't get sloppy just because we're winning. The battle lasted another 6 hours, but its outcome was never again in doubt. The combined fleet operated with a precision that demonstrated both human tactical expertise and Concordat harmonic mastery. When it was over, New Denver still stood, protected by the most sophisticated defense grid ever created. In the aftermath, as cleanup crews dealt with swarm debris, Vec approached Winters with an unusual request. "We wish to establish a permanent defense academy here," they announced, "where both our peoples can teach the art of protective harmony." Winters smiled, watching the sun rise over the saved city. "I think Major Cooper would approve of that garden." The Battle of New Denver marked the turning point in the war. But more importantly, it proved that peace wasn't about the absence of strength. It was about how you chose to use it. 5 years after the Battle of New Denver, retired Colonel Jack Davidson stood before the inaugural graduating class of the Galactic Defense Academy. The rebuilt city sparkled behind him, its architecture now a unique blend of human and Concordat design. Practical defense seamlessly integrated with harmonious beauty. "When I first met the Concordat," he began, his dress uniform still fitting perfectly despite the years, "they called us savages for maintaining armed guards at an embassy. Today, I see before me the first class of what they now call Harmony Guards, beings dedicated to the protection of peace through strength and wisdom." The assembled graduates included humans, crystalline Concordat beings, and even a few representatives from species that had once hidden from both civilizations. They wore uniforms that combined human military precision with Concordat geometric patterns, their ranks indicated by both traditional insignia and harmonic color frequencies. High Mediator Zixis, once Davidson's greatest critic, now stood beside him as co-director of the Academy. Their crystalline form shimmered with what humans had learned to recognize as proud determination. "We thought peace was a state of being." Zixis addressed the crowd, their tones carrying clearly across the parade ground. "Something achieved and then simply maintained. We were wrong. Peace, like any garden, requires constant tending. It requires guardians who understand both the beauty of harmony and the necessity of defense." The Academy itself was a testament to this philosophy. Training grounds incorporated both meditation chambers and tactical simulators. Students learned both human combat techniques and Concordat harmony manipulation. The result was a new kind of protector, warriors who could fight with precision and heal with harmony. "Your first assignments await," Davidson continued. "Some of you will join the combined fleet, protecting trade routes and colonies. Others will serve in planetary defense grids. Many will help establish new academy branches across both our civilizations. But all of you share a common purpose. You are the gardeners of peace." He gestured to the memorial wall behind the stage, where names from both civilizations were inscribed. Those who had fallen defending others during the Swarm War. These heroes taught us the true meaning of peace. It isn't the absence of strength, but the wisdom to know how to use it. The ceremony reached its peak as Vec, now the Academy's chief tactical instructor, led the graduates in the Defender's Oath, a ceremony that combined human military tradition with Concordat harmonics. The graduates' voices merged with crystalline tones. "We stand as gardeners, not soldiers, protectors, not conquerors. In our hands, strength serves peace. Through our watch, harmony endures. We are the walls that guard the garden of civilization." As the sun set over New Denver, Davidson found himself back in his office, looking at an old photo from the Washington Embassy incident. Zixis entered quietly, their form glowing softly. "You were right," the High Mediator admitted, not for the first time. "About everything. Davidson shook his head. No, we were both right, and both wrong. You understood the goal, true peace. We understood one of the means, protective strength. Only together did we find the complete answer. On his desk sat two objects, his original Marine Corps combat knife and a Concordat Harmony crystal. Together, they symbolized the Academy's core philosophy, the tools of defense serving the cause of peace. A priority alert flashed on his screen. Long-range sensors had detected something strange at the galaxy's edge. But this time, neither humanity nor the Concordat faced the unknown alone. Already, a combined fleet task force was preparing to investigate, crewed by graduates trained in both harmony and defense. The garden grows, Zixus observed, watching ships rise from the Academy's spaceport. And its guardians grow with it, Davidson agreed, remembering that first tense standoff with the Concordat. Who would have thought your peace lovers would end up becoming the galaxy's finest protectors? Perhaps, Zixus's colors shifted to a thoughtful pattern. That is precisely why we were meant to find each other. Together, they watched the next generation of Guardians head out into the stars, carrying with them the greatest lesson of the Swarm War. True peace was not a passive state to be achieved, but an active garden to be tended, protected, and cherished. And its guardians would always stand ready.